Shrivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukham karoti vachanam pangam langati giri. Yat kripatamaham vande Shri Guru Dinatarnam Paramanandam Madhav. Hare Krishna, thank you for joining. We'll resume our discussion from the 9th chapter, 3rd canto, verse 31. Tattatmani loke cha bhakti yukta samahitaha drashta tatam brahman mai lokans tvamatmanaha. O Brahma, when you are absorbed in devotional service, in the course of your creative activities, you will see me in you throughout the universe. And you will see that you yourself, the universe and all the living entities are all in me. So the chapter had begun with Brahma praying to Lord Garbhodaksha Vishnu for empowerment to speak on, for empowerment to execute his designated responsibility of creating the universe. And and after Brahma had spoken the prayers, then beginning from verse 29, we see the corresponding benedictions from Lord Vishnu. So in 29, Lord Vishnu had said that what you are begging from me has already been granted. And in verse 30, he said that situate yourself in penance and meditation and follow the principles of knowledge to receive my favor. By these actions, you will be able to understand everything from within your heart. So if you recollect, Brahma was concerned about two things. First was about his ability to create. And the second was that would he get overwhelmed with the modes? Because the whole process of creation is so rajasic, so in the mode of passion. He said, will I get contaminated with pride? Will I forget my position as the servant of the Lord? So in the previous two verses, Brahma had addressed the first concern, saying that don't worry, you have already been empowered by me to create. That which you are asking, the ability to create, I have already given to you. And then he recommends that through the process of penance, he can access that. Now he is addressing his second concern. And how does he address it? Saying that if you're engaged in bhakti, where he tells Brahma that you will see me, Atmanani, in the world. He will see him in the jivas. He will see him in the planets. So thus, anywhere that Brahma's vision goes, over the vast expanse of matter of the universe, over the innumerable living entities, or within himself an introspection, he will see the Lord. So this is Krishna assuring Brahma that even though he may be completely absorbed in creation, but that creation is non-different from him. The planets, the jivas, the energy for that creation, all that is coming from him. So there is no possibility of Brahma forgetting Krishna. And this is also an instruction for us. Sometimes we say that how is it possible to stay Krishna conscious? That when we are in the temple, it's easy because there are deities, there's kirtan, there's devotees. But when we are at work or when we are with family, in case the family is not that inclined, it's difficult. And the instructions to Brahma are the guiding principle over here. That it's not that Krishna is not present there. The reason that he becomes absent from there is because we separate those activities. We consider our profession to be separate from Krishna. So we are the one who separates ourselves from Krishna. Vishwanath Chakravarti says that this vision that the Lord is giving Brahma, the ability to see him in every aspect of the universe, is the same vision that Mother Yashoda had when she looked into the mouth of Krishna to check if he was eating dirt. So if you see the description over there, it is similar, that how she sees the entire creation within Krishna. And then she sees herself within the creation. And then she sees Krishna outside the creation and yet inside the creation. But the difference is that for Mother Yashoda, this was her vision getting degraded. Because Mother Yashoda is an eternal associate in the Vatsalya Ras. For Brahma, he is an exalted soul, but he is a conditioned jiva. This represents an exalted position for him. So for him, it's a benediction, and for Mother Yashoda, it was just a momentary degradation that caused bewilderment. Vishwanath Chakravarti also says that this verse could point to Brahma Vimohan Leela. So Lord Vishnu is saying that Brahma will see him spread everywhere, spread out in the cows and in the gopas. And at the same time, he will see him in all the universes in the four-armed form as Vishnu. And he will also see many forms of himself, Brahma, within these universes. And Prabhupada also points to the same. He says that it is cited herein by the Lord that during his daytime, Brahma would see him as Lord Shri Krishna. He would appreciate how the Lord expanded himself into all the calves during his childhood at Vrindavan. He would know how Yashoda Mai saw all the universe and planetary systems within the mouth of Krishna during his playhood childhood times. And he would also see that there are many millions of Brahma during the appearance of Lord Krishna in Brahma's daytime. So Prabhupada refers to these more deeper and subtle understanding of the verse. Next verse 32. Yada tu sarvabhuteshu darsho vagnimiva sthitam pratikshashita mam loko Jayatareva Kashmalam. You will see me in all living entities, as well as all over the universe. Just as fire is situated in wood, only in that state of transcendental vision will you be able to be free from all kinds of illusion. So Prabhupada explains in the purport that Brahma's prayer was that he would never forget his eternal relationship with the Lord during the process of creation. And the Lord is saying that he should not think of existing without a relationship within his omnipotency. The analogy that is used here is like fire within wood. So regardless of the form of the wood, the fire is the same. Whether it is a big log or a small log, whether it is a straight log or whether it is a curved log, smooth or rough, the quality of fire is the same. Similarly, regardless of the nature of creation, whether demigod or rakshasas or humans, or whether it is matter or spirit, the Lord is there everywhere. The potency is the same. And the quality of a devotee of the Lord is that they are not affected by the outer coverings, but they simply look at the relationship of the outer covering with the omnipotent, omnipresent Lord. And in this way, they never forget the touch of the Lord in any circumstance. Okay, next verse 33. Yada rahitam atmanam bhutendriya gunashaha sarupena mayopetam pashchan swarajyam rachati. When you're free from the conception of gross and subtle bodies, and when your senses are free from all the influences of the modes of material nature, you will realize your pure form in my association. At that time, you will be situated in pure consciousness. So this is the nature of the Lord, that he gives more than what you ask for. So Brahma had asked for two things. He had said that please protect me and please empower me to create. Krishna said those are already given to you, but let me give you more. So what is he giving Brahma now? He is giving him the benediction of liberation. So he is saying that after you have executed your duties, you will become free of this conception of gross and subtle bodies, which means that you will become free of this material world because of his complete meditation. Because of him seeing the Lord everywhere, he will give up the material conception of the self. And he will only see himself in relationship to the service of the Lord. So, so earlier on when Brahma, he was glorifying the Lord, he had given obeisances to both the personal and the impersonal form. So this verse shows both the forms as objects of the perfect realization. So one way to read the verse is that when the jnani sees that the jiva, tvam, becomes in his swarup one with me. So this is the Lord saying, upetam tat. Then he attains swarajayam. Then he attains liberation. Or the verse could mean that when the devotee sees that he is endowed with a spiritual form as per his rasa, and the Lord reciprocating in the corresponding mood, then the devotee attains his swarup, swarajya. So because Brahma had given obeisances to the impersonal form of the Lord, which is attained through Gyan, and to the personal form of the Lord, which is attained through Bhakti, the Lord is reciprocating with both the moods there. And in terms of the personal mood, Vishwanath Chakravarti says that the words of the verse point towards a predominance of dasyaras. So Prabhupada in the purport says that this verse is also applicable to the Jnani school. The enlightened Jnani, when free from all material contamination, namely the gross and subtle bodies, together with the senses of the material modes of nature, is placed in the supreme and is thus liberated from material bondage. And then Prabhupada says actually the Jnani and the devotees are in agreement up to the point of liberation from material contamination. So they both accept the fact that the material world is not a place to be in. They both want to get out of it. The difference is that the Jnani, he does not proceed beyond the liberation from the material world. Whereas the devotees, they go the next step and they develop a spiritual individuality, a spontaneous service attitude, and they engage in transcendental loving service of the Lord. Okay. So we have two more verses in this chapter. After that, we'll pause for any discussion. Verse 34. Nana kama vitanena prajabhavi shikshtatah natma vasiddhatyasmimste varshiyan mad anugraha. Since you have desired to increase the population innumerably and expand your varieties of service, you shall be never deprived in this matter, because my causeless mercy upon you will always increase for all time. So Lord Vishnu is promising to Brahma that after having given him Gyan and Bhakti and Rasa, he is now promising his Anugraha. He is saying that you will always have my mercy, not just now, not just because you're praying to me, that I'm giving you my mercy, and then after that you're on your own, but for as long as you are engaged in this service, for all times, the mercy will be there and it will continue to grow. So this is the nature of the Lord, that he is giving so much more than Brahma is asking. Brahma had just asked for mercy at this point of time. But he is offering him mercy forever. Brahma had simply asked for empowerment to create, and Krishna is promising him liberation. So this is the affection that the Lord has for his devotees. Next verse 35. Rishimadyam nabannati, Rishimadyam nabadnati, Papyan stvam rajogunaha, Yanmanomaya nirbaddham, Prajasansrajatopite. You are the original Rishi, and because your mind is always fixed on me, even though you will be engaged in generating various progeny, the vicious more of passion will never encroach upon you. So this is a summation, and Brahma had asked for some things. Krishna had given his assurance that he will get them. Then he gives his assurances of more than what he had asked for. And then he concludes by saying that, yes, whatever you have asked, you will get. So just that, because just to pacify Brahma, just so that Brahma does not get confused that what is it that I'm getting? Am I getting this or am I getting that? So for the sake of reassuring Brahma, he summarizes the two things they had asked for, and that he will he will never be impacted by the modes, and the fact that he is addressing him as Rishi Madhyam, that you are the original Rishi, indicates that he will create many more, which means that he will be engaged in the process of creation successfully without any impact of the modes on it. So this concludes the 9th chapter, which is Brahma's prayers for creative energy. And quickly summarizing the chapter, that it began with the prayers of Brahma to the Supreme Lord, and then Brahma lamenting about the predicament of the conditioned soul, and essentially talking about the souls that will come in the universe, and also himself with humility, and then glorifying the Lord's reciprocation with his devotees. Then Brahma offers his obeisances unto the various manifestations of Krishna, his personal form, his impersonal form, Vishvarupa, Kalrupa. He offers manifestations, obeisances to them. And then he concludes by asking for the empowerment to create and protect from pride and false ego. And then Krishna responds, and he says that by following penance and devotion, the Lord will never be lost from his vision. And then he gives more to Brahma than what he asked for. He promises him liberation, and he promises him an ever increasing protection of mercy. And then finally Krishna establishes himself as the ultimate goal, thereby assuring Brahma that it would be very easy to see him because he is there everywhere, and concludes the benediction by reaffirming that everything that Brahma had asked for will be provided. Okay, so I'll stop here and see if there is any discussion.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
There has 44 verses.
Yes.
We have 9 more verses in the chapter.
We have, let me see. we do. If you give me just 1 minute. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so we'll do the 9 more verses, but I'm still going to pause here and see if there's any questions or comments so far.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, just one comment. We always say that when we preach, we say, from an ant up to Lord Brahma, they are all conditioned. Okay, now we see in this verse, Krishna said that the vicious mode of action will never encroach upon you. Is Brahma really conditioned as we say he's conditioned?
So I guess a couple of things. I think the verse that you're referring to is the Brahma Samhita. Well, that says Indra Indra Gopam. That says from Indra to the smallest creature. But yes, I've heard this also, that from Brahma to the lowest, everybody is conditioned. The difference is the level of conditioning. There are some that are more conditioned. There are some that are less conditioned. Brahma is a jiva. He's in the material world. So the reason he's there in the material world is because there is conditioning. Otherwise, he would not be in the material world. But the difference over here, of course, is the extent of conditioning. It is minimal in the case of Brahma, which is why he's able to speak with such deep realization, which is why he's able to get personal audience of the Lord, which is why he's able to do so much. Because if you put yourself in Brahma's position, then you can see how difficult it is for him to maintain his composure. That he's the like we had seen earlier when Brahma had said that even though I am the highest creature in this universe, even though I'm the lord of all the planets, even though I'm the cause of all the living entities, but I still give my obeisances to you. So yes, while he's conditioned, but his conditioning is a lot lesser than what it is for those in the lower planets. It's my understanding.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Regarding this last verse that we saw, how Krishna is assuring that Brahma would never be infected by mode of passion. We also hear that Brahma was attracted to goddess Saraswati, and that. So, how to understand these two things? That was it under the passion, or was it also part of service? Or can you please do some reconciliation?
So the acharyas say that Brahma's bewilderment should not be considered as being under the influence of the modes, as our bewilderment. For example, the Brahma Vimohan Leela is called a Leela because he was engaged by Krishna. And Brahma being attracted to his to his own daughter, Vak. In the purport also to that pastime, Prabhupada says that it's an it's something like it's a caution to us that even the greatest personality like Brahma is subject to something like that. But the glory there is the fact that he was able to surmount it and continue with his service. So while he was influenced by the modes, he did not act on the mode. And not only did he not act on the mode, he was able to throw off his bewilderment also. And that's why he was allowed to continue with his service. Because if in any way Brahma would have been contaminated, then he would not have been allowed to continue with that service. Can you imagine the person who is at the head of the universe, at the head of the sampradaya, and if there was adharma in him, then the repercussions would be very, very horrific. But the glory of a devotee is that he is able to re-establish himself in the shelter of Krishna. That's the glory. It's not that they're invincible and invulnerable and so powerful that nobody can touch them. But the glory is that they're quickly able to take shelter of Krishna. We see that in the case of Arjun. We see that in the case of Maharaj Parikshit. That they're able to continue their service because they quickly take shelter and re-establish themselves. Okay, so if there are no more questions, we can continue with verse 36. Yato aham bhavata tvadya durvigyo pidehina yan mam tvam manayase yuktam bhutendriya gunatmabi. Although I am not easily knowable by the conditioned soul, you have known me today because you know that my personality is not constituted of anything material, and specifically not of the 5 gross and 3 subtle elements. So this verse very closely parallels the verse in chapter 4, Janma Karma Chame Divyam Yume Veti Tattvata. That Krishna, he is establishing the reason why Brahma is so fortunate. So when we see Krishna giving all these benedictions to Brahma, then we may ask ourselves, why not us? And Krishna is establishing the qualifications of Brahma that make him a suitable recipient of the benedictions. So he says that you have known me today because you know that I am not anything material. Now, in itself, it seems to be a very superficial thing. But if one were to internalize this realization that the God is nothing material and fully spiritual, that establishes one firmly in the platform of bhakti. Why? Because you begin to see your body as material. You begin to see that which is around you as material, as nothing to do with you as spiritual. And when you see yourself as spiritual, then you see yourself in relationship to the Supreme Spirit. So both these realizations manifest at the same time. Detachment from the material world and a strong attraction to the spiritual. So this is the qualification that the Lord is saying. So when Krishna is glorifying Brahma's qualification, he's also giving us encouragement that if we were to develop the same kind of attitude, then we would also be qualified to receive his mercy in the same way. Okay, next verse, 37. Tubhyam advichakshayam atmameda shito bahi nalena salil mulam pushkarasya vichinvataha. While you were contemplating whether there was a source to the stem of the lotus of your birth, and you even entered into that stem, you could not trace out anything. But at that time, I manifested my form from within. So what is the second guidance given by the Lord? That he is not accessible by material endeavors. So if you remember that when Brahma, he was first either reawoken or born, this is more to his birth, he was not sure about why he is there, what is this lotus he's sitting there. So he went into the stem of the lotus and traveled for a very, very long time and could not find anything. He looked in all directions. He got 4 heads, but still could not understand anything. So the point is that material endeavor, irregardless of how ugra they are, that traveling down for a long, long time down the stalk of the lotus, or looking everywhere, here and there, all the research, all the ugra karma that is done, that is not going to reveal the Lord. But he says, I manifested my form from within. That only by the mercy of the Lord does the Lord, out of his supremely free will, desire to manifest his form. No external material endeavor qualifies one to see the Lord. Next verse. Yachakarthangamat stotram mat katha bhuyadankhitam yadva tapasi te nishtha saeshamad anugraha. O Brahma, the prayers that you have chanted, praising the glories of my transcendental activities, the penances you have undertaken to understand me, and your full faith in me, all these are considered my causeless mercy. So in the previous verse, Krishna had said that material endeavors will not help one be able to see him. In this verse, he is saying that while spiritual endeavors will qualify, but they are also a result of his mat anugraha, of his causeless mercy. So this is just to disambiguate the notion of pride in a devotee. So devotee sometimes hears that Krishna sells himself to the devotee, or the devotee owns Krishna, or a devotional service, it bewilders the Lord. So all these things are heard. Now, at least when the devotee is in the neophyte stage, then they might sometime get bewildered by it, thinking that the Lord, I got the Lord under control by my bhakti. And Krishna is saying that actually even that bhakti is my mercy, which means that essentially for anything and everything, one is dependent on the mercy of the Lord. So Prabhupada mentions that this mercy of the Lord appears as Chaitya Guru, which is the Paramatma within that guides the soul when the soul begins to listen to him. The Paramatma is always there, but reciprocating in kind. When the soul ignores, the Paramatma is neutral. But when the soul turns to the Paramatma, then he takes the position of Chaitya Guru. And then by the grace of Chaitya Guru, does the Guru appear, which is why it is considered that one spiritual master is an expansion of the Chaitya Guru, is an expansion of the Paramatma within, because they are both serving the same purpose. Okay, next verse. Pritoamastu bhadram te lokanam vijaye chaya yadashto shirgunmayam nirgunam manuvarnayan. I am very much pleased by your description of me in terms of my transcendental qualities, which appear mundane to the mundaners. I grant you all benedictions in your desire to glorify all the planets by your activities. So previous verse, the Lord had said that even bhakti is a manifestation of his mercy. So what attracts that mercy? Because if it is causeless mercy, then should just one wait for it to causelessly appear? So there is an inherent contradiction in the terms here, that if the mercy is causeless, then it can't have a cause, right? Otherwise it's not causeless. So when Krishna is saying that my mercy is causeless, then one can say, okay, let me just sit back and wait for the causeless mercy to appear. And then he says that this is how my causeless mercy manifests. So what had Brahma done? He had, in this particular case, Archanam. He had glorified the Lord with beautiful prayers, which essentially is a stand-in for bhakti, is one of the angas of bhakti. So the question still remains, then how is the mercy causeless? So the way it is explained is that it is causeless from the perspective of the magnitude of reciprocation. So the example is that I take $1 I buy a lottery ticket and I win $100 million. So what will I tell everybody? So I'll tell everybody that I won $100 million. I won't say that I won $99,999,999. So because that $1 is insignificant compared to what I win. It is as good as not existing. So in the same way, the efforts that we do and the reciprocation by the Lord are in completely different scales of magnitude. But yet, you need to have that $1 to buy the ticket to win the $100 million. If you didn't put that $1, you would not get the $100 million. So there is some causality. But because the magnitude of it is so minuscule, the causelessness is also completely is a completely authentic statement. Okay, next verse. Yatena pumanityam stutva stotrena mam bhaje tasyashu samprasadyema sarvakama vareshwaraha. Any human being who prays like Brahma and who thus worships me shall very soon be blessed with the fulfillment of all his desires. For I am the Lord of all benediction. So initially this point was being made implicitly. Now Krishna makes it explicit. He says, Yaitena, anyone who does this, regardless of their antecedents. Now, it doesn't mean that we go and we start praying to Krishna that may I create the universe, because we're not going to be doing that. But the focus over here is what Krishna had said, that when you pray to me in this understanding that I am completely spiritual, that I am the Lord of all benedictions, that I am the fire within all the forms of wood. And Krishna is being very kind over here. He's saying that we'll be blessed with the fulfillment of all his desires. So Prabhupada says that the Lord certainly fulfills all desires in regard to transcendental loving service. The focus of this statement by Prabhupada in the purport is that one should not approach the Lord for only material desires. Because he is he's using this example of the prayers that were offered by Brahma, that Brahma wanted to execute such ugra karma. But his prayers were that may I execute them without material desires. May I not be proud of the results of my action. May I not consider myself as the greatest of the doer. So Brahma's prayers was that may I serve, may all my effort be converted to transcendental loving service. And then the Lord is the Lord of all benedictions. And so that's why Prabhupada says that he cannot fulfill the whims of non-devotees, even when such casual devotees offer him the best of prayers. So the Lord's reciprocation is predicated on the mood in which he is approached. Okay, next verse. Purtena tapasa yagyer daner yoga samadhina radhaniha shreyan pumsham matpritis tattvavinmatam. It is the opinion of expert transcendentalists that the ultimate goal of performing all traditional good works, penances, sacrifices, charities, mystic activities, trances, etc., is to invoke my satisfaction. So here Krishna is establishing the principle that he had stated in the previous verse, that anything and everything can be converted into devotional service by doing it for the satisfaction of the Lord. So this is covering karma. So the initial, he says good works, charities. This is in the category of karma kand. Then penances and sacrifices. Then mystic activities. Mystic activities is in the category of Astanga Yoga. Then penances and sacrifices, they are in the category of Gyan and Vairagya. So anything, whether it is karma or Gyan or yoga, anything and everything can be considered to be an anga of bhakti if it is done in the mood of satisfying the Lord. And Krishna says tattva vidmatam. So this is the opinion of expert transcendentalists. So Krishna, of course, Krishna's opinion is his opinion. It is a Vedic fact. It is an irrefutable, unshakable fact. But Krishna also will take shelter of the Vedas and the words of his devotees to glorify them. So why will Krishna quote somebody else's opinion? Because he would consider that opinion to be at the same level as his own opinion, which means that he is considering the person who holds that opinion to be undisturbed, to be uncorrupted, and not illusioned, just like him. So he is glorifying the Tattvavit, the expert transcendentalists, that they themselves, by performing all kinds of activities, whether it is in karma or gyan or yoga, have reached me. They have reached the state of being undisturbed, have reached the state where I am actually quoting them. This is the potency of doing everything for my satisfaction. So this is also another assurance to Brahma, but it is essentially a guidance to us that by simply continuing to do what we do in a Krishna conscious way will attract the mercy of the Lord. Prabhupada gives the example of Arjun in the battlefield. So very, very, very similar. Okay. Aham atmanam dhata presta san prayashamapi ato mai ratim kurya dehadirya krite priyaha. I am the super soul of every individual. I am the supreme director and the dearest. People are wrongly attached to the gross and subtle bodies, but they should be attached to me only. So, so Prabhupada mentions in this, in his purport, that in the present verse, stress is given to focusing love upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word kuryat is significant. This means one must have it. It is just to stress that we must have more and more attachment to the principle of love. The influence of Maya is experienced by the part and parcel spiritual entity, but it cannot influence the super soul, the Paramatma. The Mayavadi philosophers, accepting the influence of Maya on the living entity, want to become one with the Paramatma. But because they have no actual love for Paramatma, they remain ever entrapped by the influence of Maya and are unable to approach the vicinity of Paramatma. This inability is due to the lack of affection for the Paramatma. So Krishna is making two important philosophical points over here. The first point that he's making is that all that he is asking, the jiva already has. He is not asking for the jiva to invent anything new. So later on in the purport, Prabhupada uses an analogy of a person who has forgotten about his wealth and is searching for it. Now he's always wealthy. The only difference is that at some point he forgets that he's wealthy. So he thinks that he has become poor. But even when he was thinking that he was poor, he still had all that wealth. So everything that Krishna is asking of us, we don't have to go and earn it. We just need to rediscover it. Which brings us to the second point, that if the jiva is completely materially conditioned, where will he get? What will break this cycle? So previously Krishna had said Paramatma. But then one might say that the Paramatma is residing within the conditioned body. So when you say where is the Paramatma, you point within your heart, which is within the gross and subtle body. So what is to say that the Paramatma is also not conditioned? And that is why Krishna is making this point that regardless of where it is situated, the Paramatma is always eternally spiritual and beyond the modes. If the Paramatma was conditioned, there was no way that it could act as Chaitya Guru. And Prabhupada said this is the mistake that is done by the Mayavadis. They consider the Paramatma to be conditioned because it is embedded within the modes. And they consider themselves to be conditioned. So they consider themselves to be the Paramatma. And then they extrapolate it and they say that just like the conditioned me is the conditioned Paramatma, the unconditioned me is the Supreme Lord. And that's why they fall into the lowest modes of ignorance. But Krishna is giving us this understanding, and then he uses the Prabhupada uses the example of the sun and the sunlight that he has used several times before. Okay, so let's go to the next verse. Sarvavedamayenedam atmanatmanayonina praja sraja yatha purvam yaschamai anushirate. By following my instructions, you can now generate the living entities as before, by dint of a complete Vedic wisdom and the body you have directly received from me, the supreme cause of everything. So this is once again Krishna reassuring Brahma. So he wanted to be empowered to generate the living entities. And Krishna says that now you have got my instructions. So the instructions are both the instructions on how to generate the living entities and the wisdom of not being illusioned in the process of creating it. And Krishna speaks with affection to Brahma. This is the body that you have directly received from me. So he's just establishing this because the mood of Brahma is primarily that of a devotee. So with affection, Krishna is saying that you're my son. So you don't have to worry. May you be successful in all your efforts. Okay, so this ends the chapter. Let me pause here and see if there's any discussion.
I think one more verse is there.
Oh, there is. Sorry. Yeah, one more verse. Maitre vacha tasma evam jagat shastre pradhan purusheshwaraha vyachedam svena rupena kanjana bhastirodade. The sage Maitreya said, after instructing Brahma, the creator of the universe, to expand the primeval Lord, the personality of Godhead, in his personal form as Narayan, disappeared. So, Tirodade indicates that in the form that the Lord was instructing, he disappeared. So the disappearance would not make sense because Krishna had just now said that everything he would see him everywhere, but he disappeared from that particular pastime of the conversation. So we saw that Brahma had the vision of Lord Vishnu and the conversation was going on. So he disappeared from that vision. He, of course, continued to exist. And Prabhupada in the purport writes, that is the explanation of the Chatushloki Bhagavatam. So actually, Vishwanath Chakravarti, for the sake of time, I won't do it, but he also establishes a correspondence between the verses spoken by Lord Vishnu to the Chatushloki Bhagavatam. He says this verse corresponds to this verse. Prabhupada in the last verse, he refers to it. But the essential instructions are, as you can see, they're very similar to the Chatushloki, where Krishna talks about how he's the cause of everything material and spiritual, how they are dependent on him, but he is not dependent on them. And then he speaks about the process, the process of bhakti. So there is correspondence, and Vishwanath Chakravarti, he makes this correspondence. So sufficient for us to know that the instructions are similar to what we see in the Chatushloki. Okay. So now finally the chapter is done. Any questions or comments? Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, like sometimes, Prabhuji, I hear the explanation that some people say that Jiva is in ignorance, and when that little bit of ignorance is gone, he will be merged on to Paramatma. That Jivatma and Paramatma, the only difference is little bit of ignorance when he realizes that pretty much they are kind of saying that they became God, but for Krishna I can tell easily, but with Paramatma also I try to share as similar to God, but how do we explain to such kind of arguments, Prabhuji?
So the argument that you're saying is that when the ignorance that covers the jiva is removed, then the jiva becomes at the same level as God. That's the argument that people make.
Yes, Prabhuji.
In a sense, that's a point that is discussed several times by Srila Prabhupada, that the ignorance that is removed is the ignorance of the self-identification. That what do you identify yourself as? And if let's assume today I am identifying myself with the material body, and tomorrow I say that my ignorance is gone, and now I am a pure devotee of the Lord, that is yet another form of ignorance, because I still have not realized that identity. I'm simply acting on a platform that is unreal. So one aspect to it is, of course, tattva, that ignorance is that which takes you to the right tattva. Otherwise, anybody can manufacture a tattva. I can manufacture something, you can manufacture something, and I can say, okay, now I realize that I am nothing, or now I realize that I am everything. But it is a manufactured. So that is the first aspect, that the ignorance that is removed should take one to what is the actual tattva, which is the relationship of service and distinction from the Lord. The second aspect of it is that the ignorance should be factually removed. It should not be removed from a platform of speculation. So factually means that it should be experientially removed. So when I say that, yes, I am an eternal servant of Krishna, even though that is a tattva that is bona fide, if I say it and start acting upon it without even realizing it, then even that is Brahma. Why? Because I'm acting according to my adhikar is not there, right? I'm not qualified to act as a eternal associate of the Lord. So these two things are important. That the ignorance should take one to what the real tattva is, and it should factually take one. So if you're traveling from US to India, one is you should know where India is, and the second is you should actually travel there. Only then can you say that you have arrived there. So this is one way that you can explain. In different discussions, Prabhupada would explain things. Sometimes he would explain things in a more challenging way, like the famous example that he would give, that if you're God and you're illusioned, that means illusion is more powerful than you, which means illusion is more powerful than God. So it either means that illusion is God, or it means that you were never God. So you take your choice, whichever you want. Another way he would talk about was stressing on the eternal individuality, that experientially we always consider ourselves to be individuals. We may not have experiences of past and future lives, but individuality is something that we very, very instinctively, strongly adhere to. And any efforts to destroy individualities have always resulted in failures, even from a more materialistic perspective. So then how can you forego your individuality? So at different points Prabhupada would give this, but these are some of the main points that he would speak.
Sure. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Haribol Prabhu.
I was thinking of these 2 points which you made on this text 42. Like you said, the 2 philosophical points on how Jiva is asking what which he already has, right? Like I the first point which I would like to elaborate what my understanding is, and just for your correction. We already have, we are from the higher consciousness, and we did acquire whatever we did acquire right now, right? And we are trying to ask again this two steps. One is the material side of it, and also from the spiritual side of it. That leads to your second philosophical point, like as Jiva is materially conditioned, how does it break this cycle, right? And even though we are spiritually, like, let us say in my case right now, right, I wanted to break this, and I wanted to go based on in your earlier verses. You said we can go with the Jnana Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga, whichever suits me. I can just choose it. Is it? Uh, and also, we also discussed in one of the earlier verses, like we need to have Krishna in the center all the time. That will keep us in the mood of getting towards Krishna. Right? That's the mood we get. Is my understanding right? And the only hangout here is how to identify myself to break from this cycle.
You're right, Prabhu. So the challenge is, taking Prabhupada's analogy, which is beautiful because it's so comprehensive. So if you're wealthy and if you've forgotten your wealth, then how can you regain your wealth? Because the situation is itself self-contradictory. That you've forgotten your wealth, and you may be very, very wealthy, but you've forgotten, which is why somebody else needs to come and remind you that yes, you're wealthy. Somebody outside of you, somebody who knows you, who knows where your wealth is, and who can then guide you to reclaiming that wealth. Which is why the need for a guru is paramount, because a guru takes on that role. Now, once the guru takes on that role, then he acts from within as Chaitya and from without as the spiritual, as a spiritual master, which then led to the other point that if the Paramatma is within you, then doesn't he also get conditioned? Just like the soul has got conditioned within the gross and subtle body, which is why Krishna, he assures us by saying that no. Because ultimately the external guru comes to us by the inspiration of the Chaitya Guru. So the Chaitya Guru is the one that breaks the cycle, that he inspires. So we have all gone through this personal journey ourselves, that at some point in our bhakti, we felt the need to take shelter. And the need became stronger and stronger and stronger. And it was coming from within. There may have been a catalyst from outside. We may have been inspired by other devotees. We may have read something and gotten inspired. But ultimately, it was something that was very strong within us, that grew and grew. And that's the inspiration of the Paramatma. Now, once that inspiration happens, I think that was the second part of your question, that once we are reminded that yes, there is a great wealth that belongs to us, and this is where it is located, and this is how to get to it, then after that, it is incumbent upon us to follow through the process. Take a right over there, go over there, cross the river, avoid the trees, avoid the thorny branches, turn to this path, and then you will find the wealth, which is what we are trying to do to the best of our ability.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Makes sense.
Okay, so we're kind of at the end. So I'll just take some time to speak about. Last time I had mentioned that I was talking about the certification. So I'll just brief all of you about where we are. So I had started this by writing to the Board of Education so that I can issue Bhakti Vaibhava certificates to the devotees who would like to pursue it. And it became a little bit of a catch-22 because they said that then you need to have a center that is certified. So then I said, okay, to the temple that I go to, this ISKCON of DC. So I submitted a form, an application form, which, let me tell you, is a pretty elaborate form to fill, but I went through it and I submitted it. So when I submitted the form, they said that we can't make the temple a center unless there is a certified, a Bhakti Vaibhava certified instructor in that center. Now, there are two devotees in the temple who are doing Bhakti Vaibhava classes. There is me and there is Braj Prabhu, and neither of us have Bhakti Vaibhava certification. So because of that, they said the center cannot be certified. So then I spoke to MIHE, Atul Krishna Prabhu, and so they are developing a more, I guess, a more contemporary program, again under the BOEX. So this is not a separate program, which is called Teach and Study, and that is basically for devotees who have been practicing and preaching for a long time, who have been studying for a long time, but have not had the time to take the formal certification. They can teach, and while they're teaching, they can also get the certification. So I applied for that program, and I was approved under that program. So now I'm approved to teach and study. So the next step is for me to get my own certification as I'm teaching. And at the same time, I'm also authorized to conduct certification for the students at the same time. So this program is still being developed and they're working on the details. Atul Krishna Prabhu, who is kind of the head of the MIHE, he sent me the details of the question bank, etc. And we had a good conversation. So this is what I'll be working on, and this is what we all can work on. For those of you who would like to do the certification, I can start sending you the format of the certification process. I also asked him if there was any way that I can help him out, or the devotees who are doing Bhakti Vaibhava with me can help him out. And what he asked was that yes, they have the question bank, which basically is the repository of questions from which the specific questions will be asked. And if it would be possible to have to kind of establish the references to the answers for those questions based on Prabhupada's purports. So there's a particular question that is asked, and then somebody can look at that question and look at the purport of Prabhupada and then do a copy paste and say that this section is the reference to the answer. So those of you who have a Bhakti Shastri degree and who are so inclined, if you can reach out to me or Prem Kishore Prabhu, I have the question bank with me. I can divide it. So let's assume there are 4 of us. I can divide it amongst 4. I have it for the first 2 cantos. They're still working on the other 4 cantos. So I can divide it amongst the devotees who volunteer. And then I can compile it and send it back to MIHE. So that will be just our helping out in this program. It's a new program. And so let's assume I get my certification on module 1, then I can turn around and grade the summation of the students on module 1. So I don't have to wait for my entire Bhakti Vaibhava certification. It's kind of an ongoing process, module by module. That when I get cleared for module 1, then I can examine the students for module 1. Same thing for module 2, and so on. There are still gaps, and he's saying that we are about maybe 2 to 3 months away from completely laying it out. But this is what the general direction is.
I have a question. When you say question bank, the question bank is different from those questions that we usually answer. All right, that's clear. My second question is, from the question bank, will that be an open book or a closed book? The answer, to those questions.
So there are 4 components of the exam. There is closed book short answer question, closed book essays, open book essays, and shloka memorization. And there is different stipulations. For the entire Bhakti Vaibhava, the closed book questions should have answers adding up to 10,000 words. The open book essays should have answers adding up to 20,000 words. And there has to be at least 200 closed book questions for the entire Bhakti Vaibhava. So within that, there is discretion given to the examiner. So the format they have is that they create a question bank. All the questions come within that question bank. Now that question bank is, I haven't counted them, but I'm guessing there are much more than 200 questions. So the examiner has the liberty of picking and choosing, and the person who is responding also has the liberty. So let's assume I set the paper. So instead of the 200 questions, I pick 500 questions. And the person who's answering out of the 500 questions picks 200 questions, and then a response to it. But ultimately, all the questions will come from the question bank. And the idea is that the focus is more on examination. That the closed book examination is invigilated by a local devotee, or it's done over Zoom by virtually invigilated. Open book, of course, is open book. Qualitatively, there are some requirements for the students to have given some lectures, some hours of lectures, or video presentations, or some kind of preaching that can be validated. And shloka recitation can either be in person or it could be as part of the closed book. These are some aspects that they're working on. That's the general outline that they've laid out.
I have another question. Presently, I'm running some, not me, but I'm organizing some Bhakti Shastri courses through BCEC, means the Bhaktivedanta College of something. It's based in Pune Chopati. So I think that the devotee who conducts the classes is Chaitanya Charan. You listen to his classes and then you do tutorials, and then they set the exam, And I usually invigilate, means I supervise the exams. We have quite a few devotees in Guyana and Suriname who is doing that program. It's pretty intense. I mean, but my question is that I see when the closed book exam, they will give a number of questions, just like they'll give you probably 80 questions. And then at the exam time, out of those 80, maybe 30, 40 will come. So you have, you know, like, I mean, if you answer all the 80, you're sure at, you know, at the exam time, you'll make the exam, because you automatically will cover everything. So I'm just wondering, you're saying question bank. I mean, if that question bank, you know, could be released, let's say 200 questions, and then maybe 100 comes to the exam. So it gives, you know, kind of a guideline, because I'm seeing the intent of the studies that we are going through. And I mean, you know, from Canto 1, Canto 2, Canto 3, I mean, I see it as very, very intense. And then just to answer a question out of the blues, you know, it might be a little difficult.
So,
I mean, it's like a
yes,
concern.
Prabhu. Your understanding is correct. That's the format that's being proposed, that there will be a question bank that will be given, and the question paper will be out of that question bank.
Okay.
So if somebody prepares that question bank, then they're prepared for the exam, because as you rightly pointed out, Bhagavatam is an ocean. It's very difficult to comprehend everything, especially being examined on it, which is why he's asking for way that we can help, because he said that if you and the group of devotees that are interested in the certification, in any way they will prepare for the exam by answering those questions. So that question, so for those who are qualified to take the exam, the question bank will be sent to them. And so how would you, so let's assume that I get the question bank, how will I prepare for the exam? I'll answer each and every question. So he's saying that while you answer it, you send it back to me also. And then I can compile it, and then I can keep it as a guideline to subsequent students, that not only am I giving you the questions, I'm also pointing you to the purports where you can get the answers.
Well, yeah, songs to me just like the Purva Swadhyaya, because in each one of those questions, because I am answering, I think, up to chapter 8, I am right now completed chapter 8. So I'm going to do 9 and 10, but I see for every question, there's a little bracket there, and it directs you to the purport.
Exactly.
And if you read the purport, then, you know, it encourages you, you know, to study. You have to study, you know, the purports, and then you find the answers. You know,
Yes.
It's in the bracket.
Yes, exactly the same. Exactly the same. The exam questions are a little bit more simpler than the Swadhyaya questions. So the closed book exam questions are a little bit more simpler than the Swadhyaya question, because I think they're making adjustment for the fact that these are closed book questions.
My understanding, I mean, my feeling is that the Purva Swadhyaya, I mean, what we are doing, they're very easy. I find no difficulty answering them.
Because you have access to the purport. But if the Purva Swadhyaya was given to you saying that don't look at the purport, don't look at it's closed, then they become a little bit more difficult. So I'm looking at it from that perspective.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, So I'll separately send out to those of you who are Bhakti Shastri and who are interested in Bhakti Vaibhava. I'll send out the question and help and interested in helping out over there. I'll send out the question banks, and that would basically do both. It will help you prepare for the exam, and it will also be a service to Atul Krishna and MIHE and all that. They will also start compiling the answer bank.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so we went a little bit over time. Sorry about that. We'll end over here. Vancha kalpatarubhayaschit kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anant Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Thai Gaur Premanand. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Bol, Hare Krishna.